Okay, I'm not used to this. I need to get comfortable again. Okay. Hello, Waiting in the Waters family. I am so happy to be here. I missed you. I really did, and I'm so excited for season 2. You have no idea. So much has gone into season 2, and I took a little break. It was kind of long, but it was definitely needed because, I feel like my cup was kind of getting drained a little bit, and I needed some time for God to really just pour into me. And He did, because He's taught me so much. I've gone through so much. The background is different, as you can tell, and I'm going to explain a little bit why and a little bit of my journey in the off season before we get into this episode, which I'm so excited for. As you know, I'm excited for every single episode, but this one is truly special because this starts off season 2, and season 2 is going to be all about Jesus. The goal for Waiting in the Waters is to really have the Holy Spirit work through me, and whatever I have on my heart and whatever I really feel like God is wanting me to speak, I'll speak. And sometimes that means a change of topic each week or each season, and the theme is always going to change each season because of that reason. I am actually in a college building right now. I am in a study room. If you don't know, God really spoke to me, and I felt called and led to attend college and dive deeper into studying ministry and studying theology, and it's been really amazing. But I was a little, not scared because I trusted, but I was a little apprehensive on where I would film, because it's such a major priority for me. And God has really just blessed me with this room. There's a lot of different study rooms in the school library, so you can rent out a room for an extended period of time. So that's where we're at right now. That's why a whiteboard is in the back of me. Not my usual setup, but I'm just really happy and grateful that He has brought me here. God provides. I have had so many experiences where I would be worrying or having anxious thoughts or anxiety. I was literally having anxious thoughts last night. I could not go to bed. And time again, God proves Himself, and He provides. And it's so amazing, and I'm so grateful for Him. I'm so grateful that we have a God that we can genuinely count on. It's not a God to where we have to live up to be at this certain point or be like something. It's no, He will meet us to where we're at, and He will provide no matter what. Under any circumstances, He will be there for you. And that's what today's episode is going to be about, because Jesus is Jireh. As I was in my off season, like I said, I let God fill my cup and really speak to me. And I wanted it to be 100% what God wanted in season 2. There was a time where I was like, okay, are you even in it, God? Of course, He's in Waiting in the Waters, but everybody's human. Everybody has those, I really hope that it's not just me doing this, because I can't do this on my own. I can't be just speaking and talking about God if God is not in the room with me. So I was having a moment where I was really wanting confirmation about if God is even in Waiting in the Waters, and He definitely is. And I had to wait on His provision. I had to wait on His guidance for season 2. And that's all about His providing as well. We have to wait for Him to provide. And sometimes we want it our way. We want it right away. But I didn't want that, because Waiting in the Waters is so special and sacred to me. And I didn't want just to write out a plan for season 2 based on me. And so I kind of had to wait a little bit, and he definitely revealed what season 2 is meant to be. And it's meant to be simply about Jesus. Nothing about me, nothing about anything else in the Bible, really. Nothing about topics, just Jesus. And so each week we're going to be studying a characteristic that Jesus displayed, and he still displays every single day. And hopefully the end goal is to equip those characteristics and apply them for ourselves. So I encourage you to get a pen, get a paper. Actually, I encourage you to get a whole journal, because this is going to be a long 12-week period. It's kind of like a self-development course, but not in a way of you have to like change who you are, or you have to like dive deep into like who you are as a person, and like what's your favorite movie and what's your favorite, like, no, it's nothing really about you. It's all about Jesus. And so that's what it's different than just like a regular self-development plan, because it's really developing wisdom about Jesus. That's first and foremost. So we have to look outside of ourselves. Having a journal to document where you're at in the beginning of this course, and then document throughout this whole course, and where your heart is at the end of the course. I think that there's going to be such a difference in your heart in the beginning of this and then the end of this. That's what I'm hoping, and that's the end goal. I'm going to share some of the objectives for season 2 that God really wanted me to focus on. So first and foremost, this series is going to be a podcast course that will develop your heart to be more like Jesus. So often, everybody seems to say they believe in Jesus, but their actions and how they carry themselves do not display anything like Jesus. And what I'm finding is believing in Jesus is a completely different thing than following him. And that's the goal in this season, is to, yes, absolutely believe in him, but take it a step further and start living like him. And there's so much like, okay, where do I start? Who even is Jesus? How? There's so many questions to that. Like, how do I live like Jesus? Well, first, it's all in the Bible. You have to be okay with reading the Bible and taking notes and actually changing your heart, like changing your life and settling down what you want to do. We'll be reading throughout the Old and New Testament. There's actually a lot of foreshadowing, and Jesus is in the Old Testament. I truly believe that the book is written for Jesus, and it's literally a display of Jesus' life. Even in the Old Testament, where Jesus isn't present on earth, you can still see him. And so we're going to be studying the Old and New Testament. The overall goal, the overall objective is to each week provide you with another characteristic from Jesus that you can add to your heart and you can constantly focus on. So each week, I really encourage you to focus in on that characteristic and journal about it. I'm going to be reading a lot of scripture each episode, so I encourage you to write that down, journal for yourself. I also am going to be posting questions, like journal entry questions, on Wading in the Waters Instagram, so you can follow that and include those in your journal to help you develop your development plan. Is that what we're calling it? A development plan? I don't know really what to call it. Like a development course. A Jesus development course. There we go. Okay. So now that we got the introduction out of the way, let's start this specific episode. Today's episode, as you probably know, is Jesus is Jireh. What does that mean? Jireh means provider. It means He's going to provide for you when you don't think there's a way. And even if you do think there's a way, He's still going to provide for you. And maybe it's not the way that you think, and maybe it's not what you think. We sometimes will go for an apple because we think that we want an apple, we want that crunch, but actually what we need is vitamin C or vitamin D. I don't know what vitamin oranges have in them, but maybe we need an orange because we need some of those vitamins instead of some of the vitamins in the apple, if you get what I'm saying. So, and God only knows that. God is the only one that truly knows what we need. And so instead of thinking, oh, I want this apple, oh, I want this, let's go to God. Like, literally, we forget how powerful and how real He is. And sometimes we just don't know. And it takes experiences after experiences to really know that. We're going to read about Abraham and how God tested his faith. He not only tested his faith, but He showed Abraham that He promises and provides. Genesis 22 says, "Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, 'Abraham, here I am,' he replied. Then God said, 'Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you.' Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him two of his servants and his son Isaac. When he cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, 'Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you.' Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father, 'Abraham, father?' 'Yes, my son,' Abraham replied. 'The fire and wood are here,' Isaac said, 'but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?' Abraham answered, 'God Himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son.' And the two of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on top. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, 'Abraham, Abraham!' 'Here I am,' he replied. 'Do not lay a hand on that boy,' he said. 'Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you not withheld me from your son, or because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son.' Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by his thorns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, 'The Lord will provide.' And to this day it is said, 'On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided.' The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, 'I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and although your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me.'" I love that story so much because it testifies a lot of different points. One being that God is going to provide provision within His promise. Abraham was so confident. If you caught what he said to his servants, he said, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." It says we because Abraham was so confident. He was confident because previously God promised that Isaac would be the descendant and he will make Abraham's descendants grow. And God promised that Isaac was going to be the son that did that. So it would not make sense for God to kill Isaac. And he could if he wanted to, but he didn't because of his promise. So that just shows that God will never take his promise away. This also displays Jesus. Jesus is that offering. We didn't have to sacrifice ourselves. Thank goodness. Like, imagine everybody on this earth having to sacrifice as Jesus did, having to die as Jesus did. This is kind of like a foreshadow. And it's in Genesis. It's in the Old Testament. But so much of Jesus is in the Old Testament. This also testifies to Abraham being faithful and obedient. Even though Abraham knew that God would not take his promise back, Abraham still obeyed. He didn't rely on his own understanding, because if it was my understanding and God told me to put my daughter or my son on this altar and kill them, I would be like, don't you know what you're doing? You literally promised that my kid would grow my family and I have to kill them? Like, do you know? Are you good? Like, but Abraham didn't do that. And that just goes to testify that Abraham did not rely on his own understanding, that he knew God's understanding was greater than his. God can see the overall picture in your life, and he knows what you need and what you want. And he also knows if you're going to obey him or not. Sometimes the test is just for you. It was just for Abraham, because there was treasure after the test. Anytime God tests your faith, if you pass, like Abraham did when he took his son Isaac up on the altar and he obeyed God, even though he could have easily relied on his own understanding and thought, "You're crazy, God, what are you doing?" He didn't, and he understood God's understanding was way greater than his. And then there was treasure after that. So anytime you go throughout a test, anytime you are full of, wait, why am I doing this? Rely on God's understanding, and I promise you there will be treasure. This is how we apply what Jesus is, which is Jireh. This is how we apply it, is we be content in every circumstance, and we praise him and we worship him. I fall victim to this a lot, but I'll always want more. There was a moment this past week actually that I was craving a pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks. And this sounds like such a first world problem, and I'm so sorry. This is probably going to be painful for some people to hear. But it was really disappointing when I got in my car and I noticed I only had a quarter, way less than a quarter of gas. And right now, I'm in college, so I'm trying to save money as much as possible. And Starbucks, the local Starbucks, is about 25 minutes away. So it is a drive, but I was so desperate for a pumpkin spice latte. I wanted it so bad because that's what I'm used to. I'm used to driving 10 minutes from my house, and I'm used to a lifestyle that supports a pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks every week, almost 2 times a week, and maybe if I'm lucky 3. And so I get in my car and I'm FaceTiming my mom, and it just kind of hits me wait, I have to pay for gas, and I also want a pumpkin spice latte. I want some egg bites because I'm hungry. Obviously, I need a pumpkin muffin because it's fall time. And then I look at my phone and it's 2 drinks for $10, and I'm like, okay, so I'm getting sucked and I want so much Starbucks right now, and I'm thinking, okay, so my bill is going to be like $30. Okay, great. And then I have to pay for gas, obviously, which is going to be $30 to $40. Oh, that's like $100, and it just hits me, and I actually get like so frustrated and almost want to start crying because I don't have a job right now here in Kentucky. And that's another thing that I am trusting God that He will provide for me. But it just kind of hit me like, oh, this is where I have to actually learn to adjust my lifestyle and be content with my living means right now. We're all at fault for it. But if we just come from a place and we just take a minute and we sit and we focus on gratitude and being content with what God has provided, we get so fixated on maybe your living means from 5 years ago or 2 years ago. Your living means from in the past is not the same as in the present, and we get so hung up on that, and we want to stick to the past. I had a time with wanting to go back to the past, and not that the past was good at all. It was genuinely because I think there's something in our brains chemically that happens to where we get nostalgia or something like that, and we want to go to the past. And we want to stay there. And then what we start doing is we start grabbing things from the past and try to put them in the present, but they don't fit in the present. And then what happens is we get distracted and then we don't stay in the present. So I kind of had to go through a fit with God. Like, I really want Starbucks right now. I was looking forward to it all week. I don't really want coffee, here. I don't want to make my own coffee. Yes, that would be cheaper, but I don't want that. I want that Starbucks fix. That first sip feeling? I wanted that, but I couldn't have it. So what did I do? I went to Starbucks. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's not the point. I took advantage of my dining hall food, and I went and got a breakfast, and it was actually a really good breakfast. It was good quality. I had a lot of breakfast. It was amazing. And I tell that story because it does play into the fact that God will provide a certain living means for you, and if you're not compliant and if you're not content in that, it's just going to add a lot of struggle and a lot of unbalance for you. You're going to feel like it's just you're running out all the time. It's going to feel like your cup is never full. And so I encourage you to journal about what fills your cup and what is God doing in your life in the present moment right now to fill your cup. Not what He did in the past. Maybe you can journal about that too to kind of compare and contrast, but really focus on the present moment. And look at what He's given you. Look at what He has provided, because I promise you, if you find the things that He has given you, you can start propelling yourself with that. I like the saying, you can make lemons from lemonade. No, sorry. You can make lemonade from lemons, or you can make a lemon garden from your lemons, or you can make lemonade from lemons. And that is such a testament to God, because He wants us to be fruitful. He provides us the seed. He provides us the lemon. But it's our job to figure out what to do with that lemon. And sometimes drinking that lemonade is going to be more instantaneous. It's going to be more quick. And we're going to want it because we like things quick. We don't want to wait on things. But if we're content with it and we take a step back and we say, I can make a whole lemon field full of lemon trees, if that's what they grow on. Lemon trees, lemon bushes. I don't know. But you get the point, I think. and it's going to be more fruitful because of that. We're going to have so many more lemons to make lemonade. And then what we can do with that lemonade from our lemon garden is start to sell the lemonade and get more profit to buy more lemons, and then, it goes on and on and on. I love farming for that reason. I don't know why I love it so much, because I don't have a farm. The only time I grew stuff was like 2 years ago. I grew bell peppers and a sweet potato and a cucumber, and I'm now a farmer. But I love farming so much because of that reason, because of the patience and what it brings. Another thing to journal on is to assess your moral stability. And what I mean by that is God is going to give you basically a moral compass, a moral standpoint for how you live your life. And sometimes we have to take a minute and assess and adjust that. And how we do that is just look into our lives, see, it's kind of like budgeting, but on a spiritual level. We have to see, what we need, whereas what we want to save up for, what we need to be patient for. Assess and adjust your moral stability before your financial stability will come through. Meaning, you have to take a look at your faith before your financials come. If you are just expecting God to meet you and provide for you, and you're just expecting him to do what you want, he's not going to do that, because he's not a God in a box. He's going to actually exceed your expectations. However, if you're telling him what to do, that's never ever going to work, because he is a God that provides, and he wants to provide for you. He really does. He doesn't want to just answer you. He doesn't want to answer to you. Okay, Mark 6. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm just going to start on verse 30. But to give a little bit of a backstory, it's one of Jesus' teachings where so many people started to show up. I mean, people from like everywhere, all the nations. And it was crazy because different nations were not seen together all in one sitting. If you heard of The Chosen, it's such an amazing series, and I'm not sure exactly what episode, but I'm pretty sure it's season 3. In one of the episodes, it displays what Mark 6 is all about, and it really goes into setting up the scenery and like what it looked like, and it was really amazing. I love The Chosen so much. I really recommend that to anybody that wants to have something to watch, number one, but number two, like, I remember the first time I watched it through, I cried every single episode. Now I'm okay. I'm like rewatching all of the seasons, but the first time that I watched it, it was very, very powerful, and I really recommend watching the episode that talks about Mark 6, because it's such a powerful episode. It's probably my favorite scene out of the whole Chosen series, specifically when the apostles go throughout it's a crazy large crowd, like insane, and what happens is it's so many people that they're struggling like in the back and everything to hear Jesus, what he's saying. So what happens is Jesus sends out his apostles throughout the crowd, and it's an amazing scene where they are echoes of what Jesus is saying, and that's literally what it's all about. It's so touching because, and I could like cry right now, but like I feel like my job is to be an echo, and not just me, but so many people. Like everybody's job is just to be an echo of Jesus, and I really encourage you to look at that scene after this episode. Verse 30 says, "The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, 'Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest.' So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them, and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. "This is a remote place," they said, "and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "That would take more than a half year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have?" he asked. "Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up at heaven. He gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. This isn't talking about Jesus giving each person just a little crumb, because that's not in Jesus' character. Jesus will never give you a crumb. He also knew, and he wanted to make sure his sheep were fed. There's a really important part in that says the crowd of people were like a sheep without a shepherd. And obviously Jesus takes pity in that, and he takes mercy in that, because he is the only shepherd, and he knew that they were getting hungry. He didn't want them to go off into another country, into another town, and try to get food for themselves, because he is the only supplier, and he knew that he wanted to supply and provide for them. This isn't talking about Jesus giving each person just a little crumb, because that's not in Jesus' character. Jesus will never give you a crumb. He also knew, and he wanted to make sure his sheep were fed. There's a really important part in that says the crowd of people were like a sheep without a shepherd. And obviously Jesus takes pity in that, and he takes mercy in that, because he is the only shepherd, and he knew that they were getting hungry. He didn't want them to go off into another country, into another town, and try to get food for themselves, because he is the only supplier, and he knew that he wanted to supply and provide for them. Imagine a God that would settle at just giving us a crumb. He doesn't settle in that. He gives us everything and more. He will exceed our expectations. And it just takes us to look up. It says that they looked up and prayed to God. There was a middle part in not having enough food to having enough food plus more. There was a little middle part that was so essential and so important, and it was the part that they looked up to the heavens and they prayed. That is the part that we get stuck on. We sometimes will get stuck on not having enough and wanting to jump to the next part, to the provision, to the abundance. And we also won't want to go through the praise. We won't want to go through the prayer, because that takes a lot of effort, that takes a lot of faith, that takes a lot of believing, and that's sometimes really, really hard. And Jesus doesn't want you to leave. He also doesn't want you to go to the next town and try to scramble, and he doesn't want you to waste your wages. The point is, Jesus is Jireh, and he will provide over and over and over again. It just takes you to be content with where you're at and expect the unexpected, but also don't put God in a box. don't put Jesus in a box. If the apostles came up and were like, Jesus, man, all these people are hungry. So what you need to do is da da da. That didn't happen. Jesus told them what to do. So looking at these two different stories, we can kind of compare and contrast them. One being a test, basically. The second one was, in a way, a test, but it was more of proof that Jesus will provide. The first story was about a test, and so there's two different types of provision. There's two different types of waiting for God to provide. Either you've been waiting for a while and it's a test, or on the other hand, it can simply be that God wants to show you how good He is. And we just have to wait, and we have to soak His teachings in, because the crowd, they weren't so worried about being hungry when Jesus was teaching. They were soaking up all the teachings, and that is sometimes just our job. Sometimes our job is just to soak in all the teachings and be content with where we're at, but also trusting that Jesus has us taken care of. So whether or not God is taking you through a time in your life where you need to grow your faith, or if your faith is being tested, regardless, know that Jesus is Jireh. I'm so happy that today was the day. Like, Sin 2 is going to be amazing, and I really hope that you stick around. I've missed ya. I hope that we can see each other next week. Thank you so much for listening to Waiting in the Waters. I pray that blessings and teachings will be upon you, and I pray that your heart will be equipped to hear them. I will see you guys next week. Bye. You know the song, Jireh? Okay, I'm not gonna sing it. Yeah, that was embarrassing. I'm not putting that in. A lot of new tools in your tool belt. Okay, why am I talking like that? So feel like, bless you, accompanied by accompanied. It's not over yet, folks. Maybe it is done.